Hi, this is Iris here at the Polyform Design Center, and today we're going to be discussing sanding and buffing, and we're going to show you just how we do it right here. There are lots of methods of finishing completed design projects. People use glazes. There are the Sculpey glazes, both in glossy and satin. A lot of people use future floor finish, and there are other glazes available. But lots of projects call for sanding and buffing, and we want to show you how to do that today. One thing I'd like you to bear in mind is that not all projects are suitable for sanding and buffing. Projects that use layers of clay are not suitable. The Makumagani projects, swirl projects, marble projects are not suitable for this method, because when you do the sanding as well as the buffing, a certain amount of clay is removed. If you remove a layer of clay in the Makumagani process, you'll also be removing some of your design, and that's not what you want to do. But today we're going to be sanding a clay-covered pen. It's covered in canes, and also some tiles created with mica shift. So let's get started. When doing sanding, we use wet-dry sandpaper, and we do the sanding in water or right above water. The reason they use wet-dry sandpaper is that you don't want any of the sanding dust to be inhaled by you or anyone else around you. And what we do is we have a series of different grits, starting with 300 or 400 and working all the way up through 1,000, 1,200, or 1,500. You could do it in stages, 4 or 5 different sizes, 3 or 4, depending on what you like. And you're going to try, when you try this at home, you'll see the different results. Right now, this is a clay-covered pen. I removed the ink from it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand one end of it. So when I sand it and buff it, you'll be able to see the difference. And I start with 300, and I'm just going to sand it all around. And when you sand it, it actually does take off a layer of the clay. Making sure to get that in. It smooths it out. As smooth as you make it when you're doing the clay, it always has a few little bumps. And I just keep rinsing it off. So this is 320. I'm going to try some 400 now. And it's pretty easy sanding something that's of an even surface. It becomes a little bit more difficult when it's uneven. So I'm going to continue working through this all the way up through 1,000, but this is just how I do it. And the reason I'm only working on the bottom is I want to be able to show you what it looks like after it's sanded and buffed as opposed to before. And the other thing that I'm going to show you is a tile. And the tile is done in mica shift, and that looks great sanded and buffed. So once again, I'm going to go back to the 300 and start with that. And whatever comfortable to you. If you feel that it's better to hold the sandpaper and rub the tile, go right ahead with that. If you want the edges very sharp, you want to do the edges also, as opposed to just the surface. I've completed sanding both this tile and half of the clay-covered pen. I used a 300 grit, 400 grit, 600, 800, and 1,000. And I just want to clarify to you, the lower number grits are the coarser grits, and as you get up to 1,000 or 1,200, they're very fine. So now I'm going to dry off my pieces and head over to the buffing wheel. I'm using a Fordham buffer with a white muslin buffing disc on it, and a very important part of using the buffer is safety. I wear glasses, so I don't have to, but if you don't wear glasses, you're going to have to wear safety goggles that you purchase at the hardware store. And the other thing that you want to remember is not to have any loose clothing or jewelry on, because they very easily can get caught in the buffer. I've seen it happen, and it's not a pretty sight. Anyway, so what we do is we start at a medium speed, and we hold the piece that we want to buff underneath the buffing wheel. A little bit forward, and we just continuously move it. If you don't move it continuously, then you're going to have a spot that is worn away. So we're just going to do this, holding everything very tightly. And it doesn't take long for you to see the shine on it. And you really don't have to press into the buffing wheel. You just have to hold your item against it. Okay, now I'm going to move it up about a third more. I usually do it at 4 different speeds. And once I have this completely buffed, I'm going to show you it compared to one that I made that we didn't sand or buff. And I know when you do beads, it's not as easy as holding a tile, but you have to be careful because those beads sometimes get out of your hands and go behind the machine. So sometimes people put a little cardboard enclosure around so they don't lose their items. Okay, now I'm going to go up to the highest speed. And once again, I'm really not pressing that hard into the buffing wheel. I'm just kind of allowing the buffing wheel to glide across my tile. I wish I could hand this tile off to each and every one of you so you could see how shiny it is and how smooth. It really does have a glass-like finish as opposed to the tile that we have done no work on. But this is pretty amazing. I'm going to quickly do the pen and you'll be able to see the difference on that one too. It's probably a little harder to see the shine on this section of the pen as opposed to this section, probably because of the complication of the design. But believe me, when you do one yourself, you will see the difference and you'll be mighty happy. One thing I wanted to mention before the end of the video was that a lot of people use a Dremel tool and use a cotton, a muslin wheel on it to do their buffing also. Thanks a lot, and I hope you try this method. It really makes a difference.